All right, so today we're going deep into open source biology.
Okay.
You share some super interesting research on synthetics biology,
Yeah.
like its potential and all the risks that go with it.
Yeah.
So we're going to try to give everyone a balanced view of all this because it's changing so fast.
It is a rapidly changing field, and it's got just incredible potential.
Yeah.
I mean, we're talking about engineering, but with DNA,
Yeah.
designing and building biological systems that are completely new.
Like what?
Like, imagine biofuels, but from algae. Or bacteria that are engineered to make life-saving drugs.
Oh.
That's the kind of thing we're looking at.
Oh, yeah.
But like any powerful tool you have to understand the risks, especially with open access.
And that's exactly what this one article, Biosecurity and Open Source Biology, dives right into.
Yeah.
This whole idea of openness in science.
Right.
So the faster info is shared, the faster science moves forward.
Yeah.
But then
what happens?
What happens when anyone can mess with how organisms are made?
Well, that's the big question, isn't it? And the article really emphasizes that risk, this accessibility is great on the one hand, but it's also a potential risk. And they use the 1918 Spanish flu virus as an example.
Okay.
Researchers were actually able to reconstruct this deadly virus from genetic material.
Wait, they rebuilt the Spanish flu?
They did.
That killed millions of people.
Yeah, it's pretty incredible, isn't it?
Why would they do that? And then publish it for anyone to see?
It sounds alarming at first, I know.
Yeah.
But if we understand these past pandemics, it helps us prepare for new outbreaks, you see.
Okay.
So that's the reason behind it. But you are right to question the publication of the genetic sequence.
Right.
I mean, there definitely were concerns about misuse.
That's a tough one. Knowledge is power, but in the wrong hands.
Absolutely.
So how do we manage all this? What's being done?
Several measures are being taken. The articles mention regulations like gene technology legislation in the EU, and there's also the Biological Weapons Convention, and then there are guidelines for responsible research from groups like the U.S. National Academies of Sciences.
Okay, guidelines are good, but, some people are always going to push the limits.
Right.
This article on open source biology mentioned biohackers.
Yes, biohackers.
What did it say about them?
They're basically individuals or communities doing biological research,
Okay.
but outside the traditional institutions, like working in home labs, often using DIY equipment.
Wow.
Which is fascinating in itself. I think most are driven by curiosity, or they want to learn, or even sometimes to find solutions to real-world problems.
Okay.
But their activities could pose some biosecurity risks.
So DIY biology with potentially really dangerous things.
Yeah, and this other article on bioterrorism said that with the technology we have today, it's possible to actually design and build complex and lethal pathogens.
Really?
And even more concerning, the genetic sequences for some of these are already online.
So this is where I start to get a little freaked out. I mean, It sounds like we're on a tightrope here.
It is a delicate balance.
How do we make sure that scientific progress doesn't turn into a disaster?
Well, it's important to remember that the researchers themselves, they know about these risks, and they are working hard to reduce them. The article emphasizes this concept of responsible innovation, which focuses on ethical considerations all the way through the research process. There's also a big push to educate scientists about dual-use research and the importance of biosecurity.
That's good to hear. But realistically, regulations and guidelines can only go so far. What about people like the biohackers we talked about, who are outside the system?
It is a valid concern. The article does mention that a lot of biohackers are driven by this idea of democratizing science.
Right.
Which is commendable, but it also acknowledges that their activities can create new challenges when it comes to biosecurity.
It sounds like we're depending on regulations, ethical guidelines, and hoping researchers will do the right thing.
We are, and that's where things get tricky.
Is that enough, though?
The article doesn't shy away from the possibility of intentional misuse. It really stresses that we need to ramp up surveillance and intelligence gathering.
Surveillance, intelligence gathering.
Yes.
Sounds like we're in a spy movie all of a sudden.
Well,
but I get it.
It's serious.
It's serious stuff.
The potential consequences of a bioterrorist attack using synthetic biology are enormous.
The article even said that this needs to be a global effort.
Absolutely. No single country can tackle this alone.
Right.
It requires international cooperation.
We're talking about sharing information, coordinating research, and setting common standards for biosafety and biosecurity.
Exactly.
Wow, this is complex.
It is.
Promoting innovation, while also guarding against potential misuse. How do we even start to find that balance?
That is the million-dollar question, isn't it? And that's why it is crucial to have these conversations, to raise awareness and encourage everyone, scientists, policymakers, and even the public, to be informed and engaged.
Couldn't agree more.
So much to unpack here. For our listeners, what are some key takeaways about the state of biosecurity in synthetic biology today?
First, understand that this field is evolving incredibly fast.
Yeah.
It has amazing potential for good,
Mm-hmm.
but there are inherent risks.
Okay.
Be aware of the ethical implications of open source research and support the development of strong biosecurity measures.
Okay.
And finally, knowledge is power.
True.
The more we know about the potential risks and benefits of synthetic biology, the better equipped we are to navigate this exciting but challenging new world. Well said. So we know there are risks to open source biology, but what about the increasing use of AI and machine learning in all of this?
That's where things get even more interesting.
Go ahead.
One of the articles focused on how AI is being used to detect pathogens. Machine learning is transforming how we identify and categorize biological threats.
So less Frankenstein in the basement and more high-tech detective work.
Yeah.
That I like.
Exactly. Imagine a system that analyzes mountains of data, blood samples, water, whatever, and it instantly flags anything suspicious.
Really?
Even tiny amounts. That's the power of machine learning.
Wow.
One article described a system that uses multi-spot optical excitation to identify different types of bacteria in real time.
Hold on. Multi-spot what? You're going to have to explain that one.
Think of it like shining different colored lights on a sample, and then analyzing the patterns of light that are reflected back. Each type of bacteria has a unique fingerprint based on how it interacts with the light.
Right.
And machine learning algorithms can be trained to spot these fingerprints with incredible accuracy.
So we're giving scientists X-ray vision then, to see the invisible and know what they're looking at.
In a way, yes. And this technology isn't limited to just the pathogens we already know about.
So we can spot something brand new that could be dangerous.
It can potentially detect subtle changes in genetic material that might indicate a new and potentially dangerous organism.
So it's like a pandemic early warning system then.
Precisely. Early detection is key to containing outbreaks before they get out of control.
Okay, so this AI-powered detection thing,
Yeah.
it's actually happening. It's not just some idea someone's got.
Oh, it's happening, all right. One of the articles described a system that's already up and running.
Really?
It's a portable AI-specific processing unit combined with an optofluidic sensor.
Okay.
It can analyze samples on the spot and give you results in milliseconds.
Milliseconds, that's incredible. So we're talking about identifying and containing outbreaks before they really even get started.
That's the hope.
Wow. Okay,
But of course, we still need to make sure these systems are accurate and reliable out in the real world.
Right, of course.
But the potential is huge.
Okay, so this is all amazing, but could someone use this AI stuff to design something even worse instead of just spotting it?
It's a good question. And if AI can analyze and identify threats, it stands to reason that it could be used to create them too.
Right.
Though the article didn't really get into that aspect of it.
Okay, well, that's a relief, I guess.
It's like any powerful technology, though, right?
Yeah.
It can be used for good or for bad.
Exactly. So we can't let fear stop progress, but we can't be naive about this either.
We need to strike a balance. Ethical guidelines and regulations are going to be key here.
Absolutely. Okay, so we've talked about AI and the potential risks, but what about the biohackers? What role do they play in all of this?
Ah, yes, the biohackers. This article on DIY biology really painted a fascinating picture of them.
Oh, yeah?
They come from all walks of life, students, hobbyists, even professional scientists who are drawn to this.
Okay.
What unites them is that they're passionate about exploring biology outside those traditional settings.
So it's like the Wild West out there.
Kind of. The article talked about how they often work in makeshift labs using homemade equipment and stuff, and they share information online, work together on projects. It's really quite something.
It's amazing and kind of scary at the same time.
It is a double-edged sword.
I mean, it's great that people are excited about science, but what about the risks of working with these tools without proper oversight?
That's the big question. The article acknowledged that while most biohackers have good intentions, curiosity, learning, even wanting to solve problems, their activities do raise concerns about biosafety and biosecurity.
Okay, so what are we doing about that? Are we just hoping for the best?
Not exactly. There are initiatives in place to try to engage with the biohacking community.
Like what?
Well, for example, some organizations are developing training programs and educational resources specifically for biohackers on biosafety.
That's a good idea. Education seems like a good place to start.
It is. It's about fostering a culture of responsibility within that community,
Right.
encouraging them to think about the implications of what they're doing and to follow best practices for safety and security.
Of working with them, not against them.
Exactly. It's about building bridges between the biohackers and the institutions, getting everyone talking, and hopefully mitigating some of the risks.
Okay, so it's a multi-pronged approach, then education, engagement, and hoping for the best.
You could say it's about embracing this democratization of science, but also being realistic about the challenges.
It's going to be an interesting future, that's for sure.
The future of biology is going to be very interesting.
So we've covered a lot: open source biology, AI, biohackers. It's a lot to wrap our heads around.
It really is, but they're all connected. And if you're interested in the future of biology, these are things you need to understand.
So for our listener, what's the key takeaway here?
Approach this with open eyes and an open mind. Be excited about the potential, but be aware of the risks. And most importantly, let's have a thoughtful conversation about how to navigate this new world responsibly.
Informed curiosity.
Yeah.
I like that. It's that mix of being excited and cautious that we need with something as powerful as synthetic biology is. We've talked about the potential and the risks and responsible innovation, but let's get philosophical for a minute.
Okay.
This field brings up some really big questions
It does.
about what it means to be human, about how we relate to nature, even about what life itself really is.
You're right. Synthetic biology really challenges those basic ideas. When we design and build these systems,
Yeah.
we're blurring the lines between natural and artificial, between what's given and what we create.
It's like we're becoming creators ourselves.
Yeah. In a way, we are.
Kind of exciting and kind of scary all at the same time.
Right.
How do we even begin to deal with these philosophical questions?
Right.
Do we need like a whole new set of ethics for synthetic biology?
That's a huge question, and ethicists and philosophers are debating it right now. Some people think that the ethical frameworks we have,
Yeah.
the ones that are based on our understanding of the natural world, they just don't work with how complex synthetic biology is.
So our old rules don't apply anymore. That's a little intimidating.
It's definitely new territory. What about the potential impact on biodiversity, for instance? If we create new organisms and release them,
Yeah.
even if we have good intentions, we could still mess up ecosystems and cause harm without meaning to?
It's like those stories about introducing a species into a new environment.
Exactly.
Sometimes it goes really wrong.
And then there's the whole issue of creating synthetic life forms.
Huh.
If we can design and build organisms from scratch,
Yeah.
does that mean we have the right to control them? To own them?
Wow. Those are big questions. It's like the GMO debate, but like 1,000 times bigger.
Right. And it goes even further. As synthetic biology keeps advancing,
Okay.
we might even have to face the possibility of creating artificial intelligence that could be equal to or even greater than human intelligence.
Okay, now that is some science fiction stuff right there.
It seems like it, but it's not as far-fetched as you might think.
I guess not.
And if that happens, we'll have even bigger questions to answer about what it means to be conscious about the meaning of life, even about the future of humanity.
My head is spinning. Synthetic biology is making us think about the biggest questions there are.
It certainly is. It's a journey into the unknown, and we have to proceed with both caution and a sense of wonder.
Well said. We've talked about how synthetic biology isn't just about the science itself.
Yeah.
It's about philosophy and ethics and what it means to be human. It's about asking big questions and maybe even redefining who we are in all of this. For our listener who's been with us on this journey, what's the one thing they should take away from this whole deep dive into open source biology?
Stay curious, stay engaged, and stay informed. Synthetic biology has the power to change everything for better or worse. The choices we make today will have huge consequences down the line. We need to choose wisely, thoughtfully, and with a sense of responsibility for the future of humanity and all life on this planet.
I think that's the perfect note to end on. This isn't just some abstract idea. The future of open source biology is something we're all a part of. Thanks for joining us on this deep dive into the